What's going on, car family? I'm Ben Wayne. I have my good friend Carson here riding with me. Today we're going to be doing a review on the 2006 Ferrari F430. So consider this episode 2 of the segment Modern Classics. Carson, I decided to bring you along because you're very knowledgeable on Ferraris.
I appreciate it. Always good to go for a ride in a Ferrari.
And I love to get your input on this car. So this is my first time behind an F430, and this is really where we started to see Ferrari input a lot of technology in their cars. This car, design-wise, has truly stood the test of time, unlike its predecessor, in my opinion, the Ferrari 360. That car didn't really age well, did it?
Now, the car is starting to look a bit dated, and, you know, when Ferrari built this car, you know, they actually debuted it back in 2003 at the auto show, and then it came out in production as an 05 model, but Ferrari quickly got outpaced with the 360 by, believe it or not, the Huracan, just the base 04 Huracan.
Right.
Made a lot more horsepower, a lot more torque, bested the 0 to 60 time by a good bit.
Gallardo, you mean? Gallardo.
Yeah, did I say Huracan? Yeah, Gallardo, sorry.
But yeah,
05 Gallardo and 04 Gallardo. So Ferrari came out with this car as a direct response to that first Gallardo. Because the 360, you know, was a 400 horsepower car.
Right.
The Gallardo was 490.
Right.
And it just crushed it in terms of power and torque. And all-wheel drive really allowed that car to apply that power well.
Right.
And so the 0 to 60 time was much, much lower.
And to be fair, the Gallardo did have a V10.
It did have a V10.
But this, compared to the 360, it looks like it went to the gym. It's a lot more chiseled, right? The 360 looks bubbly, right?
It's a bit bubbly, yeah. So this one's much more lithe, much more aerodynamically efficient. And a lot more of the panel work on this car was done with wind tunnel results.
Right,
than the
right.
360. 360 is a beautiful car, a bit dated looking now. This one looks more like a modern car, even though it's only slightly different in terms of range.
Right. And I love this one compared to the 360 because I just feel like this is what the 360 should have been when it first came out, honestly.
I mean, you look around the car, even just on the interior, it feels and looks like a modern car.
To this day, which is impressive.
Yep.
So the power plant, we have a 4.3 liter naturally aspirated V8.
Yep.
This comes from a long line of Ferrari V8s. Essentially, they've been making the same car for decades, just iteration after iteration, right?
Yeah, and they'll change the V angle of the engine a little bit. This one's a 90 degree. And they really did a good job of modernizing the power plant from the 360. There's no parts in the two cars that are interchangeable, motor-wise. So they made an engine that went from a 3.6 to a 4.3. They increased the torque by 25%, and the engine only weighs 9 pounds more.
And you're getting
it's astonishing.
88 more horsepower than the 360. This car goes 0 to 60 in about 3.6. The 360 did it in about 4.
360, even more than that, closer to 4.4.
Right. Now I will say the 6-speed F1 transmission in here, that is a little rough. Being my first time getting behind the wheel of one of these, like I said, I've only driven a 458 before, and that's a completely different car.
Yeah.
But if I had my choice, I'd go with a just traditional 6-speed manual in this car.
6-speed manual, it's hard to beat a 3-pedal car. So much fun. And you have such intimate control over the car and what the car's doing.
Right.
Now, as you get more used to driving a car like this with the F1 gearbox, you start to realize you do still have a lot of that same control based on how you shift, when you shift, at what RPM you shift, how your throttle modulation is being used. All of that comes into play with an F1 car. It just takes a while to get enough seat time to know what that feels like.
Right. It is fun to drive, though.
It's a blast to drive. It sounds terrific, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. So, in my eyes, that's what makes this car classic. Even though it's not like 25 years old, compared to today's model, the F8 Tributo or the 488,
yep.
This car you can pick up for a third of the price. Or
Indeed.
less than a third of the price, right?
Yeah, well less. Yep.
And this is still a beautiful car. It has the beautiful Tour de France blue, the classic tan interior for $100,000. That's not really bad for a Ferrari.
This is a full-fledged Ferrari. I mean, you show up somewhere in this car, or even just when you're driving it for yourself, you are not shorting yourself one bit on the full Ferrari experience.
Right.
Of 430.
And as far as what maintenance is concerned, no engine out, right?
No engine out.
You can go through a panel in the back of the cockpit.
Yep.
This one uses a timing chain instead of belts, right?
Chain, yep. No belt service.
So no belt service.
Much easier to own.
So even though belts are a bit more affordable in manufacturing, the chain is really beneficial when you own the car.
It is.
Now, I can't speak directly to 430 ownership because I haven't owned one, but from people I know, this is a much better car to maintain than, let's say, 355.
Oh my goodness, yes.
See?
Oh yeah.
I think you owned a 355, right?
yeah. This is a whole different ballgame here.
But
not only is it a lot more car, but it's a lot easier car to own.
Right. Now, I'm not going to knock the 355. That's my favorite modern Ferrari.
Hey, I love the 355, and the sound of a wailing 355 is just harmonious.
It really is.
We'll do another segment on that, but the 430 is arguably a better car in every measurable.
Yeah, it's a better car,
It
except
really is.
looks. The 355, you cannot beat that car in looks.
It's stunning. Yeah, that last of the wedge-shaped.
Yeah, the last of the classic wedge-shaped design, but Ferrari is actually my favorite brand.
Is it?
It is. It's Ferrari, and then there's everybody else in my book, because as soon as a new sports car or exotic car comes out, the first thing they do or say is, oh, well, we got to compare it to a Ferrari, or is it faster than a Ferrari? Like, that's the standard.
It's a benchmark.
So
It really is.
I think when a new car comes out and the first thing people do is compare it to Ferrari, that says something.
It tells you something, yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, I'm just putting the facts out there, and it's just the passion behind these cars. There's nothing that can really substitute a Ferrari in my book.
No, there's lots of great sports cars being made today. Lots of them. None of them feel like this.
Right.
The only car that feels like a Ferrari is a Ferrari. And that's why they've stood the test of time so well. Not only are they beautiful, but the cars have this soul and this spirit that is somehow welded into the build of the car that's I've not seen it duplicated elsewhere.
So what do you think about the interior? I love how they've incorporated the blue leather steering wheel and the dash.
Yeah, so this one was special ordered that way with the blue front to kind of mirror the Tour de France blue exterior. It's a great looking car, and they hold up very well. Much better than the 360s did in terms of the dash shrinkage.
Oh, I
and things
noticed
like
the 360 had terrible dash shrinkage.
Yeah.
Terrible. This looks great.
This looks great. This one is held up very, very well.
And the ride is actually more comfortable than I thought it would be. I thought it was going to be really harsh, like a Scud type harsh, but even though that's the higher performance version of this vehicle, the standard version seems to be fairly comfortable.
It is. Yeah, the seats are great. These are the Daytona power seats. This one's got you can probably see the speakers here in the middle. That's the high-powered hi-fi. And this one actually has the Ferrari navigation in it as well, which is an audio navigation. You can see there's no screen there. But those are all trivial accessories on the car. The important part is this motor behind us and that wheel in your hand there.
Right. It's a little cold out and the tires are cold, so I don't want to push it too much, but this is a lot of car for the money. It really is.
A lot of car. It's nearly a 500 horsepower street legal race car is really what the V8 line of Ferraris are. You know, you've got the 12-cylinder cars, which are the gentleman's GT cars.
Right.
And then you've got the V8s like this, which are the bad boys.
And to think, back in the day, this was considered the entry-level Ferrari. This is before they brought the California back, which I still don't count that as like a Ferrari. That's a subject for another video, but
Right.
in my eyes today, the entry-level Ferrari is the F8 Tributo, and then you got everything else.
Everything else, yeah.
But so let's go ahead and pull over. We'll switch seats. You get behind the wheel, and you could probably show us more what this car is about.
Okay. So the F1 gearbox in this car is way more advanced than the one in the 360. It's much smoother. It has a better creep function.
Oh, the sound of that is amazing. Oh, man. Wow. 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 Not a lot of stuff sounds like that.
No, very few cars mimic this.
That's amazing. And so this was the last V8 model to become optional with the manual, right?
That's right.
Man, let me hold on. Oh, she sings. That's insane. That is insane. That sound is just incredible. That is incredible.
Joyous, isn't it?
That is incredible.
Singing.
Oh man. So like I said, it's Ferrari for me and no one else, because in my mind, I ask myself all the time, why can't McLaren sound like that? They have some phenomenal cars, but in my opinion, they just can't seem to get the sound right. Oh man. Oh my gosh.
So we're in normal sport mode too. If we go to race mode, we reach a whole nother level.
Right. Yeah, that might be a level I'm not ready for.
Well, let me know when you are. We'll click it over on the Manatino here.
This was also the first car that had the Manatino switch, wasn't it?
That's right.
So when we first saw that come out from Ferrari, and then I guess that's something kind of everybody else adopted, but they called it something else, right?
Right, yeah.
So again, Ferrari was kind of leading the way back at this time, but now there are a lot more other brands out here now that have kind of made this industry and this segment a lot more competitive, which is good for the community. More cars, so.
It is, in fact. I mean, Ferrari leads the way in a lot of stuff because their racing program is so stout. You know, follow this guy. The very first ever Formula One gearbox was in what road car?
355.
That's right.
Yep.
1998, 355.
Yeah, that was the very first one. It was actually unheard of when that came out.
Oh yeah, revolutionary. See how smooth the gearbox is when you shift. The more you're in throttle, the smoother it is. And in this gearbox, you don't want to cut throttle as you're shifting because the car has electronics built in to account for that already.
This thing sounds so good. I don't see why anybody would ever use the radio in this car, honestly. There's absolutely no point in having the radio in this car. And the ride is remarkably smooth.
It is. You can do a lot of miles like this.
Yeah. Jeez. I'm fascinated by how smooth this car was. I was not expecting that at all. Oh, man. What an amazing machine. What an amazing machine. I'm at a loss for words right now.
To get this much vehicle experience for $100,000 is a relatively new phenomenon.
Right. And we're not saying that it's a cheap car to maintain, but what I am saying that compared to other modern Ferraris, it is a lot cheaper to maintain.
Absolutely.
A lot cheaper to maintain. So if you can find yourself into one of these, you know, just do some research on the maintenance. I'm sure there are a ton of forums out there. A lot of guys who've owned this car who can speak and are highly knowledgeable to it about what the general maintenance costs are. What an amazing vehicle.
You know, and obviously in today's market, a 430 costs a little bit more than a 360 does.
Right.
But you make up for that with your maintenance savings.
Yeah, I would never go for a 360 if I was in a position. I'd just go 430. And then the 458 is just another tier.
Right, it's a whole nother level.
It's a whole nother level.
Another
so
50% more expensive.
Right. So that's about it. So I just wanted to share with you guys this 2006 Ferrari F430. What an amazing vehicle. Carson, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you for the invite.
And if you like this episode of Modern Classics, be sure to hit the like button, share, and subscribe. Oh my gosh.
That is nothing but fun.
And until then, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thank you. what an amazing ride. That was incredible. That was truly incredible. It's a lot of car for $100,000.
It really is.
I mean,
It's a lot of fun.
there's C63s out there that cost more than this.
I know, right? The other thing we didn't even talk about was how safe your money is in a car like this. You go buy a $100,000 1-year-old 911 C4 Coupe or Targa, whatever, for $115,000, $100,000. In 3 years, that car's worth $65.
Right.
This one is not.
Right. Yeah, a lot of the AMGs and M cars out there, you spend $100,000 for it, and then 5 years later you can trade it in for a sandwich and a pair of shoes.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
That's right.
But you put your money in a car like this,
It maintains.
you buy it for $100,000 now, sell it 2 years for $100,000.
Yeah.
So it's a good investment.